Hi, and welcome to another edition of CBU Conversations. My name is Jack Shannon, and I'm privileged to serve as the president of Christian Brothers University. Joining us today is another one of our Lasallian colleagues, Dr. Jenny Cal, assistant professor within our School of Business. Welcome, Dr. Cal.
Thank you, President Shannon. So happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. So what I love about the faculty here at CBU is so incredibly diverse in terms of backgrounds and experiences, and that's particularly the case with our School of Business. Would you mind sharing a little bit of specific background and the courses that you teach here within the School of Business?
Absolutely. I have been so privileged to work at Christian Brothers University for the last 12 and a half years. For 5 years before that, I was at Union University, which is in Jackson. And before that, unlike most of my colleagues, I did not start in academia. I actually started in collections and customer service, and then I moved to negotiations. And then I started in sales and became a sales professional, and really always realized I wanted to be in business, but I just wasn't sure what it really looked like. My undergraduate degree was in psychology and business communications from UT Knoxville. And I just knew that I wanted to make money, first of all. I wanted to be a professional, help my community make some money, but I wasn't exactly sure in which role what that would look like. So I started an MBA program, although again, I didn't have really any business background. So I started a master's, and it was in management, and there is where I met my mentor, Scott Lawyer, which was over 20 years ago. And he said, "Have you ever thought about teaching?" And I really hadn't. So to make a long story short, that's kind of how I arrived into the academia world. I had to go back and learn all of the things that my colleagues already learned about how to teach, right? How to not only know this stuff, but also how to create a learning environment where students felt comfortable. And there was some really good transmission of knowledge. And so I've spent the last 17 years really still trying to critique that and get that into a really well-oiled machine, I should say. So in to answer your second question, what are the classes that I teach here at CBU? I have taught 13 different preps over the course of my career. Right now, I am teaching mostly marketing strategy, which, just like any business function, is about solving business problems where the marketing components are concerned. And I teach most of my load for the undergraduate program now. In the past, most of it was for the graduate, so I kind of straddled the two. And teaching promotional strategies, consumer behavior, some digital classes for the graduate program, but my specialty is nonprofit, which is just like CBU, right? So nonprofit marketing strategy.
So we are a not-for-profit, and we do a lot of work with not-for-profits here in the Memphis area. We're spending a lot of time this semester working with our Center for Community Engagement here on campus, and engaging with not-for-profits in Binghamton and Orange Mound. But you've been doing that well in advance of just this year. I mean, you bring experience, as you said, that is unique and is valued by your students. You have a focus on experiential learning, and that's engaging students with not-for-profits and local businesses in a more hands-on way, perhaps is a way to describe it. Can you tell us how that exactly came to be in terms of your focus on that area, and how do you think our students benefit by having experiential learning being part of the courses that they take with you?
Absolutely. I think this is a great set of questions. Hopefully I'll be sure to remember to answer both of them. Let me tell you just a little bit about how the application process started for the capstone course. So 12 years ago, when I started teaching for CBU, most of my classes were at the undergraduate level, and then we did some changes at the undergraduate level. And at the time, the director of the MBA program was like, "We really need to have a strong nonprofit that fits with our Lasallian mission. We need to really have a strong nonprofit, some course, right? Some kind of focus." And so I asked for the opportunity to create a marketing capstone a course that captured the heart of the LaSallian mission, in that we wanted to be able to provide what would be a really expensive thing for a nonprofit to have, would be a group of professionals researching their and solving their business problems where marketing was concerned. So over the course of the last 10 years, twice a year, we run this capstone project where we adopt a nonprofit. The class becomes a marketing expert pod. Well, we really call it a marketing agency, where we then become their agency of record. They provide us with an agency brief, which is just like it would happen in the real world. And then the students in the course then divide to conquer, right? They say, okay, well, I really want to learn more about how to do this analysis, how to research and develop based on trends in the market. And so a group will go after that. And then another group will solve maybe the objective of how to create awareness or how to grow an audience. And so each of the members of the class will then get to subgroup and develop a portion of the project. And you have 17, 20, it really depends on the number of students. You have that many students working collaboratively on a project that from start to finish is 8 weeks. So you were talking about throwing some students into the deep end, because many of them in the graduate program, they haven't even taken marketing before. They're familiar with it. They think it equals sales maybe, or they've gotten in a fight with somebody at the marketing department at work or something like that, right? And because marketers are just different. We're strategists, we're problem solvers. We see a desired end state, and we're going to try to give you several different ways to get there. And so you have these nonprofit CEOs or these nonprofit directors that don't think marketing, right? They're thinking about their cause, and they're trying to make sure their money is being well spent. And so this team then becomes their special group that is focused specifically on developing this project for them. And then the group, again, the agency, they have 8 weeks. They do this robust marketing plan. And probably the best part is on the 8th week, they then present their findings to the board of directors. So some of them who've never gotten to speak outside of their QB at work are having to present what they have found to a group of directors, and they're having Q&A, and they're having this engagement that's unlike anything they've had any of their programs before. So what I always mention is that they get to leave their fingerprint on some organization. So not only do we save the organization tens of thousands of dollars, but we also create this experience that these graduate students remember forever. And I really think that's important for graduate school. Not only that, they have a really awesome piece of work that they can add to their business portfolio and then share with others, especially if they're starting to look for other jobs or go down different paths. So.
What I love what you just described is that there's 3 great benefits to what you're doing with your students. First and foremost, because we are always focused on the development of our students, you're giving them some real world experiences. You're giving them the opportunity to hone those skills while still part of a class environment, but you're doing it in a way that allows them the opportunities, you said, to present to a board of trustees and to develop a portfolio, so to speak, that they can then use whether or not they're going out eventually looking for a job as part of an interview process or applying to graduate school. Secondly, in true CBU fashion, you're connecting our students to the community, and those not-for-profits that they're working with get the benefit of their time and talents, and our students get the benefit of engaging with our Memphis neighbors, which I think is really important and part of the overall educational experience. And then last but not least, you've tied their work to our LaSallian mission and identity, which is really the corner to do here at CBU. So kudos to you for making those 3 things happen, all in the context of one course. This past 6 months here at CBU and in the larger world has been a pretty challenging one for all of us. We've had to make the transition, even though we are having face-to-face instruction for a lot of our class activities, to online or a hybrid model. But in true LaSallian fashion, you have identified, I understand, some opportunities for your students coming out of that challenging environment. Can you talk a little bit more about what online learning has provided in terms of new projects or new opportunities for learning for your students?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. I'll admit that when the quarantine hit, I was a little worried what the classroom situation would look like, because one of my favorite parts about being a teacher is being in the classroom, and not just about because I get to write on the whiteboard, but it's about engaging with these students that are paying their hard-earned money to be a part of this classroom, right? And what happens in the classroom. And it's this super, awesome dynamic that happens in the classroom. And now as a professor, I'm trying to then turn that around and make that same atmosphere happen on a Zoom call. And man, oh man, that was tough. I was really worried about how that was going to look. So what I was, in the nature of all good teaching, I just turned around to my students and said, how do you want me to do it, right? How would it be best for you? Because I don't want to wait till the evaluation time and you say, this is what I could have, should have done. I want to do it right now. So I spent a lot of time individually with the students at first, because when this very first hit in March, it was really tricky to kind of finish out those classes. And I did a lot of one-on-one teaching. So it's almost like it was an independent study, for each of the students, but that's what the environment called for at that time. And then over the summer, I went ahead and said, you know what, the best way for me to get good at this job is to teach more. So I opted to teach 3 classes over the summer term, all like this. And every class, I encouraged the students to tell me what you liked and what you didn't like. So if I cannot take ownership and say that I made a perfect class, it's more so being able to be comfortable enough to give up the reins just a little bit and let your class help you develop something that works. And so what I found was, the community partners that we have aligned ourselves with are super cool, and they too didn't want to just pause work, right? They wanted to keep on working. They want to have something to do. So we were still able to work closely. In the spring term, we worked with Memphis Transformed, which was a progressive nonprofit set forth by our Chamber of Commerce to try to market a bunch of different nonprofits. And so the contact there was like, let's make this happen. Let's figure this out. And that course was so great, even with all this stuff going on. And the students were great. They were still able to communicate. They still had meetings. We did a huge hour-long presentation in a Zoom call, right? And it was awesome. And so then over the summer, those classes, they looked a little different. And instead of being the big project-based, we did student-based discussions, which sound like what you would do every day in class. But at the same time, we did it in a Zoom situation. So, and I know this is maybe something that might come up again, but I do not want to forget to mention how helpful Canvas was in this scenario, because a lot of people don't use that management system in its full capacity, and that thing is awesome. And so I spent a lot of time just trying to figure out Canvas and how to engage the students, because this really it's a working module, right? And we can make it work, and you don't have to worry about assignments or grades because it's all right there. So we used Canvas to create a mock classroom. And so I would ask a question related to class material, and their responsibility was to go in and answer the question. And then they had to go in and then they had to answer, like review their peers' findings. And so it really created this, it doesn't really mimic classroom discussion, but at the same time, it created an opportunity for them to keep on being with each other. And then I would take their collective discussions, and then we would talk about it on our weekly Zoom call. So it was a really fun way for them to laugh at each other or say, you are crazy, that's not true at all, or whatever. So that was an opportunity to not lose not lose the contact that they normally would have in class, but to really use Canvas as a way to monitor, what they're doing from their kitchen counters or wherever they're working, but also a way to keep them engaged. And the other benefit of, I actually think this remote learning thing is pretty cool, but one of the other benefits that I really enjoyed trying to transition over was the, normally when you're in class, you're like, put your phones away, don't be distracted. But now what I'm able to do is look up this, right? Look up this that's going on right now, and let's see how you feel about that, and then let's discuss it. So I was able to give them all types of external resources that they could use in addition to their textbook. And they had time, right, to review it and look through it and to create some kind of context in their mind about it. And then we went back and talked about it. And so it didn't seem like it was disruptive to the classroom setting at all. So I really liked that piece as well. And I know you probably don't want me to talk too much about Canvas, but man, I just think that thing is so cool. So in terms of opportunities, it's providing a lot of applications and things. The projects themselves don't have to change because you have this really connective management system.
So you've described something that I think is important for our viewers. We've made investments here in CBU in technology. You mentioned the Canvas learning management system. That is an incredible tool for faculty as well as our students. And you found new ways to deploy that in the midst of the pandemic to benefit you as a faculty member, but perhaps more importantly, for your students to be able to use to engage not only with you, but with each other. I also know, in addition to teaching several classes, you and a number of other faculty have taken advantage of our Center for Digital Instruction over the course of the last 6 months. And that group of colleagues is very focused on helping faculty hone their skills. Teaching remotely or online is very different in many respects. You've described some of those things, but you can become very good at it. And you have demonstrated that how that can happen in a rather quick time with a faculty member such as yourself. But what I also love is that you just described the focus that always remains on your students. You got their guidance, you got their input. It was an interactive approach that as we changed teaching models, you were always focused on what worked for them and their educational development. So that's just fantastic to hear. Before we conclude today's edition, do you have any other tips for your students and others who might be listening, perhaps a family member who is concerned about their student making the transition to online or remote learning, about how do you succeed as a student in that very, very different environment as opposed to the traditional face-to-face instruction?
Yes, sir. That is such a relevant question to me because I have a teenager that's about to start looking for colleges, and I actually have friends from like baseball whose big sisters are going to CBU, and so they are they are science majors, so I may never see them, but at the same time, I think to myself, how can I make sure that we don't have any loss? Because again, as a marketer, as a business person, I see dollar signs, right? And I know we don't want to connect all of our students to customers, but in some aspects they are. And we want to make sure that we are providing the services that they need. We can say all day long that we give, we do, we have, but if we don't show them and show them the value of those things, they don't connect it. And so they don't process it. So first of all, I wish I could meet every single student that comes to campus and tell them you are going to have great 4 years, right? It's what you put in, it's what you get out. Luckily, I get to meet with the students in the LLC because I'm the ambassador for the School of Business. And those I met with over 30 of them last Tuesday, and man, did they have stuff they wanted to talk about. And it was really the first time they'd actually seen a teacher in, face to face. And it was an awesome 3 hours of my life. But I tell you, and this is the same thing that I told them, everybody's experience is going to be subjective, right? And everybody's experience is going to be based on what they thought was going to happen. And what they thought was going to happen probably isn't in its pure form right now. But optimistic that I will see them in class soon, right? But at the same time, in the meantime, they still have to be good students. And a good student will be aware, right? And of certain things. First of all, attendance is priority. And I know attendance and participation isn't being able to be gauged the same way now as it used to be. But I tell you what, now I can gauge it even more so, these face-to-face Zoom calls, way more than I could in the classroom where I was just concerned about people showing up and if they were, what they were doing. And so in this way, I've created, using our Canvas and just these discussions through Zoom, I actually can simultaneously, as they're talking, make notes about their participation. And I wasn't able to do that in class. So I found that it's easier, right, assessing them, because I have a little bit of flexibility on this end too. So participation is still an important component of the learning experience. So show up when your teachers say show up, however they say show up. If it's on the Zoom call, if it's on the, this discussion boards or whatever it is, participation is priority. And if they say be there, right? That's important. And for me, I give them easy points, right? Just be there, help, and it's just easy points towards, much larger point pool, but still it's easy. And I also remind students that the remote format is not uncommon in learning. So don't feel like just because you're not on campus Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 12 to 12:50 doesn't mean that it's, that this is some kind of new normal or it's crazy or just unusual. It's not. There's plenty of remote learning formats that are quite successful. One thing I'll tell you too, and I would like to tell all students, is that we are still here for you. We still are a teaching institute, and all of the teachers on campus love them. We want them to be a part of our web, and so part of our fabric. And so if I can help somebody in health sciences, then I want to help them, whatever I can do. If I have to send emails or send them to Jessica or whatever I need to do, I'm going to figure out a way. And I think all of my colleagues share that. We are all in this together. We don't want to lose anybody because they were never contacted. No way, Jose. That is not going to work. We are going to make sure that you feel like you're a part of this group because we want you to stay here. We want you to graduate from CBU. We want you to be happy alumni. We want you to give back to CBU. Like I have that whole thing, right? So what can I do to help you? And it doesn't matter if you're School of Business or School of Arts or whatever, I'm still here. So use your professors, use your advisors, talk to them, ask questions, use your LLC directors, whatever it might be. But we are here and we are also looking for engagement. And I know I've said a lot, but the last thing that I also know is in terms of opportunity, one thing, and I hope that if any of my fellow professors are listening to this, I'm going to say one thing that I thought was an amazing addition that I didn't think about being important before this happened, but it was the value of a recorded lecture. So, so in this up to now, I've always just done lectures in class. And then if there was a student that needed to miss for whatever reason, they just missed, and maybe I would forward the PowerPoint along or post it and give it to them so that they can see, but then they didn't get this gist of it if they missed class. So now this capability to record in studio and post in Canvas, you can reuse your lectures if you're careful with your words, some of it, but this ability to record lectures and then let these students go back and listen to what you think is the most, not only is it a perfect lecture because you can start and stop and fix whatever you might have messed up, but also then they have this opportunity to go back and listen to the lectures before the quiz, before the test. They can listen to it with each other. They can make fun of me if they want. And I actually listened and did a bunch of training to prepare about how to make a really good recorded lecture, time slots and too long, too short, what you're trying to do, talking head versus not talking head, all that kind of stuff. But the idea was that they could stop and pause me at any time. You can't do that in a regular lecture. Take notes, say, ooh, I don't understand that. I'm going to go back and look. Or if I say, hey, check out page 163, they're going to go flip and do 163 where they might not have even brought their book in the classroom. So that option for a recorded lecture and then being able to keep those around in your studio and post them again or send them and adjust them as needed, that function is awesome. So if your teachers are taking the time to make recorded lectures, I would also suggest use all of those things that are provided to you because again, we're here for you. That was a really long answer, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Those are some really great insights about some of the values that maybe weren't apparent initially about the remote learning, the opportunities that you as a faculty member can take advantage of. And you also provided some really great guidance to our students, so I appreciate that. This brings to a close today's edition of CBU Conversations. We've been privileged to have join us today our Lasallian colleague, Professor Jenny Cowell from the School of Business, and she's been sharing with us a number of the experiences that she and her students have had during this period of remote learning, but also a number of things that have been beneficial for her students and herself as they do more in the way of engaged learning and experiential learning here at CBU. We thank you for tuning in for today's CBU Conversations. We hope that you will join us for future editions, which appear every Tuesday afternoon. Until then, continue to stay safe, continue to be well, and please, CBU and Memphis, continue to mask up for all of us, for yourselves, as well as for your families too.